We'll start with the normal waist lines. This is the waistline, the hip line, and the knee length. So on the hip line, I'm going to be dividing that by 4, and I will add 1 inch for allowance that I'm going to be using for the slit opening. So I'm going to mark that here, and I will now add 1 inch sewing allowance. I hope you get that. And then I will drop this down on the knee line, square it out like that, and then make the shaping of the knee line just like the normal skirt shaping. So I'm going to come down by 3 inches from the hip line. From here I'm coming in 1 inch, and from the hip line I'm coming down 3 inches, and then I make a curve here like this. I shape the knee line. I'm going to add back the sewing allowance, 1 inch sewing allowance. So next is to go to the waist line. On the waist, I'm going to be dividing the waist by 4, and I will add 1 inch allowance for the slit opening and that. And then I will connect it to have the waist shaping just like that. Remember to always add your sewing allowance. 1 inch is what I'm using. So now the next thing, I will have to raise this 1/2 inch like that to make the waist curve. So now is to go to the knee line to get the A-line shape that we want to make. Remember, you have to be, this is where the main thing happens, so you have to be careful. So I'm going to drop down the same length I have there. I'm going to be dropping it down, and I'm adding some inches for the flare. So it's going to be like this. Let me bring this up so you can see my lines very well. Now the length of the skirt is 40. So let me mark where the 40 ends. 40 plus 1 inch hemming allowance is going to end here, right? So now what you have to do is, from the knee line, normally from the knee line, see the lines? So from the knee line, we are supposed to measure straight like this. Whatever we get, that's the same thing we have to transfer on the flare. But for us to have a flare effect at the bottom, at the hem, this, we are going to do this differently. Wherever the line stops, wherever this stops, we are going to come down like this. Let me show you what I mean. We are going to be coming down like that. We are adding 3 inches at the hem line. So when you do it that way, it will have that flare effect instead of you cutting it straight. So I'm going to cut this out. And then we'll cut the slits. So for us to cut the slit, we're going to be dividing the bust span by 2. So here we're going to get the bust span divided by 2, and we now mark that for the slits. So a bust span divided by 2, bust span is 7 inches, divided by 2 is 3.5. So that's what I am marking here like that. I'll connect the lines. And on this line, I'm going to be making that of 1 inch, meaning 1/2 inch on each side, and I'm going to come down by 5.5. So I'll connect that like this. Then I will come down 15 inches for the slit opening. So here I'm going to have my slit opening, and on this line I'm going to be making like 2 inches wide for the slit opening. So let's cut this out so you see what I have done. So now remember that this 1 inch that we have taken on this side is for the slit opening, then the remaining other 1 inch would be for the skirt easing. So the remaining 1 inch for this place, I'm just going to mark that here and take 1 inch, that's the same thing I did to the other one. So I'm going to be dividing 1 inch into 2 and make the dart like that. Drop it 5.5 inches, connect the lines, and the remaining 1 inch is going to act as the skirt easing. So this is for the front. I'm going to be cutting the back now. Remember, I have a video on how to take away this label. I'll drop that in the link so you know how to take away fabric labels on African fabrics. So now we are going to be cutting for the back. Now this fabric I have folded in two. The next thing I'm going to do is to, take the length of the skirt. For the upper side of the skirt, I'm taking 17 inches plus 1 inch sewing allowance or hemming allowance, which is 18. So I'm going to divide the hips by 4 on the hip line, and I'm going to be adding ½ inch for the zip opening. So what you have to note, this time around I didn't add any easing allowance or anything. I just added ½ inch for the zip, and I have added 1 inch again for the sewing allowance. So on the waistline, I'm going to be dividing the waist by 4 plus ½ inch for the zipper allowance. I'll mark this and I'll connect it to the hip line. And on the knee length, I'm going to also take in 1 inch. Remember to always add ½ inch for your hip curving. So on the knee line, just the same thing I did to the front. I'm going to be coming down 3 inches from the hip line and 1 inch on the knee length and connect it. I have a full video on how to make skirts, so that's the same thing you have to do here. The only difference is that we're going to be constructing flare for the lower part of the skirt for the back. Next is for us to make a high-low flare for the back. We're going to be minusing the zip allowance, and whatever we get here, we times that by 2 and divide it by 6.28 to get the radius that we're using for the flare. And the length we're going to be using is the length from the knee line to the hem. So let me put the skirt here so that you understand what I mean. The length we are using for the flare is going to be from this knee line where this stopped to the end of the hemline. That's the length we are using. So whatever we get here is the length, and then the radius we are using is the radius of the back of the skirt. So here I have this fabric folded in two like this. I'm going to make the radius of that thing I have, and then the length that we have gotten from that. So what I have is 6.5. I'm going to take this round like this. And then for the high low, let's say the length of what we have is 20 inches from here. I'm going to be adding like 10 inches there to make a high low. So the length I have, which is 26, is by here. From here I'm going to connect this way, and I have dropped down 10 inches from the normal length to make a high low flare. So this is where it ended. I'm going to come down like that to make a high low and connect it like that. So let me cut this out so you can see. You cannot see my chalk. By the time I cut this, it will be clear. Yeah. So that's how I make my high low flare. I cut the radius out. By the time I join the back, this is how it's going to be looking. So I'll go to the machine now and join this. Yeah, now we have come to the end of today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell icon so you don't miss any of my videos. See you on my next video. Thank you. Bye bye.